Hey guys, David here. I just took a few days off due to the holiday, and along with that, I have been filming like crazy for car reviews. And since I both film and edit my videos, things take time. But as I was reviewing cars yesterday, I came to realize that I've never made a video about cars I've always wanted to review, but never had the chance to. Whether they're rare or hard to find, or my favorite, unreliable. And contrary to popular belief, a car doesn't have to be incredibly fast to be on my channel. A lot of people are too scared to email something really cool just because it doesn't have a zillion horsepower. So this is gonna be a very laid back video. We're just gonna talk about it and walk through it and have a great time. Before we get started, I just wanna give a quick thank you to our sponsor, Off the Record. Did you know that 41 million drivers in the United States get a ticket every single year? That's 112,000 people a day, or 1 in 5 drivers each year. Also, to give you an example, I got a ticket of 104 miles an hour in a 60, and Off the Record was able to help me out. And even with the reckless driving charge, I still didn't have to go to court and my sentence was reduced. The average ticket fine is around 150 bucks, but the average insurance increase is around $1,000 plus after 3 years. Off the Record fights traffic tickets and misdemeanors for drivers across the country. When you book a case with Off the Record, you are matched with an experienced local lawyer who handles your case from start to finish. Off the Record has a 97% success rate and offers its clients a full refund if they are not able to keep the ticket off the client's driving record. It's really this simple. If they don't get the ticket fees at least reduced or completely dismissed, full money back guarantee. So you literally have nothing to lose. And the good thing is, Off the Record vets their lawyers and they kick off poor performers. So you know you're getting a qualified and experienced lawyer to have your back. And another great thing is there's no court date. Off the Record will have a lawyer go to the court for you and represent you while you are getting back to your normal life. It gives you peace of mind and it's completely stress-free. It keeps your insurance premiums nice and low. You maintain a clean driving record, no court visit, and a money-back guarantee. If you download Off the Record today using my code, basically in the future, if anything were to happen like a pullover or a ticket, the 10% off discount applies the rest of the year. So go download the app and use the code ThatDudeinBlue for 10% off your first ticket on Off the Record. Thank you guys so much, and let's talk about some cars. First up is a fast or modified Cobalt SS. I get lots of emails for these cars pretty often. And in contrary, I kind of want this to be kind of with its spiritual brother, in my opinion, the SRT4. It took me 6 years to review an SRT4 because of how unreliable they are or how modified they were in the past. The Cobalt SS is one of those things where I'll get an email for it, and unfortunately, it's really just too far away. By the way, if ZZP is watching this, please let me film some of your guys' Ecotech cars. That seems amazing. But the Cobalt SS is just this kind of weird time in Chevy's history, in my opinion. They kind of wanted a tuner car, but American, so it was kind of in a league of its own in a way. There was one in Virginia Beach that I'd always see at the car meets and actually would beat a ton of people on the street. I was always very impressed. By the way, I live in Georgia now, as of right now. And unfortunately, when I go to big car shows, everybody still seems to think I still live in Virginia. So I get a lot of emails from Virginia still. So just a heads up, I still am in Georgia. Next is the Ford Escort Cosworth, the Kazi. I adore the Kazi. I love it. I think it's silly and weird and fascinating. The first time I saw one in person was actually at Ford Nationals up in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, I think in 2015. And one, I was like, man, how'd you get this here? And two, I just thought it was so cool. It's such an interesting part of Ford's rally history. Turbocharged 4-cylinder, seems fun to drive. I would be super excited to drive one of these. That's about it. I just think they're cool. Okay, so here's where we get into some weird stuff. I feel like the other ones were kind of obvious. This one's probably not obvious at all. The Lincoln Mark 8. I think this is such a strange Ford product in general. It's a Lincoln, but if you look inside, it has Mustang GT like written all over it from the same era. Because if you look at the steering wheel, it's the exact same as my first car, which was the 2002 Mustang GT. And if you look at the inside, the materials, the window switches, all that, that's during the parts bin of Ford. I think it would just be interesting to be driving this luxurious car when it's basically a reskinned Crown Victoria or Mustang GT, because it uses the 4.6 liter V8 that's found in those cars as well. And it's just this huge, elongated, weird thing. And I've always found them interesting when you see people like slam them or put them on wheels. I think it looks really good. Like when you clean up some of the chrome and some of the more tacky parts, I think you can make these cars look really good. Next is the Dodge Colt Turbo. I love weird hatches, especially from the late 80s and early 90s. Things like the Pulsar GTIR, things of that nature, the Dodge Omni GLH, which was incredibly scary to drive. But the Dodge Colt, I remember the first time I saw a fast one of these was up in Virginia, and it just blew the doors off this Corvette. And I was like, I'm sorry, what the heck was that thing? Very much like Real Street Built back in the day that was on That Racing channel. And I just fell in love with the car, of how silly and goofy it was, how this little tiny all-wheel drive hatch is just skidding across the road. And it's very much a Mitsubishi product overall. It's still during kind of the DSM era. So it's just another interesting thing to talk about. And I've always wondered how hard they are to control, even with upgraded suspension. Next is Celicas. I rarely do Celicas. I've actually only done the first one, now that I think of it, and that had a 1UZ Terminator Cobra supercharger on it. But the Celica is a car I've been dying to drive, especially if it's modified, but specifically the last one, the Need for Speed Underground one, which is not considered the good one. I would like to drive one of these that's clean, or a turboed one. I'd absolutely love to drive that platform and see how it really was. I remember as a kid, I would see it in the parking lot and be like, that thing's like crazy looking. But then you got older and you learn more about cars and you're like, that's the bad one. Like, that's what your brain would say. The GT4, which is another car I would love to drive, because the GT4 seems like a very strange Toyota product. You know, all-wheel drive, rally inspired, incredibly good at handling, etc. I'd love to do a fast GT4 as well. Next is a fast or motor swapped Datsun 510. I've never done a Datsun other than the Z series, so I'd love to see what the cars were like in the past, but also something that tiny and light with a better engine in it. I'd be fascinated, because it kind of has that old school Corolla syndrome, right? Where like the Puerto Ricans at World Cup finals take these Corollas that make them dump fast because they weigh nothing. So Datsun 510, I'd like to see a little bit of history. I'm starting to not do classic cars as much because unfortunately they don't really perform that well. And I'm not saying that in like a pity party way. It's just, I know you guys just aren't as interested in them as the modern cars or semi-modern cars. Speaking of Puerto Rico, a Suzuki Samurai with a rotary in it. I've heard rumors about these for years, and I remember I saw one in Virginia Beach when I was a kid, and I was like, what the heck is that thing? And there was a wheelie bar on the back. Next thing you know, I went to Puerto Rico in 2019, and I saw them firsthand as an adult, and I was like, I have to get behind the wheel of one of these sketchy things, because that just seems like a hoot. If you look at the geometry of the car, it just doesn't add up, right? It's just this box. And if you think about all this horsepower going in this box, that sounds terrifying, but in the best way. A Nissan Stagea, I don't know if I'm saying it right, but I'm American and we never got them, so cut me a break, is a wagon by Nissan, and I've never driven a Nissan wagon. I think you can make these look absolutely incredible. It has a great drivetrain in it, and at the same time, it just looks good. I love how good they look lowered, and especially when people do the R34 front end conversion. Side note, I'm sure a lot of people are gonna ask, but David, you haven't done an R34 yet. How come you don't wanna do one? Well, I do wanna do one, but they're kind of few and far between, and I wanna make sure when I do an R34, it's like the R34, if you know what I'm saying. Fast and Furious era, crazy high horsepower, whole nine. Nissan Stagea, want to do a Nissan wagon or a Japanese wagon in general. I think it'd be a ton of fun. Next is another one from overseas we never got. Anything with a Barra motor in it, or Barra. Please let me know in the comment section below if I say it right. Is it Barra or Barra? Help me out. down under, please. I would do anything that is a high horsepower Barra. I've always wanted to drive them. It's a crazy inline-six that we never got here in the States, so it's fascinating. And people like Adam down in Florida have done incredible things with the motor inside the GT350. Next is one I've been chasing for years, a fast or clean 2G GSX Eclipse, the Brian O'Connor Eclipse. I've always wanted to do one of these. It was my dream car when I was young. It's what I wanted as my first car. And it's actually what inspired me to do the kind of like miniature documentary I did about Mitsubishi a couple weeks ago. The Eclipse is a car that has such an amazing tuner history, including the first gen Talon and Eclipse. By the way, if you have a fast first gen as well, hit me up. I'd love to do it and feel how scary it is, because that's just what I like. The second gen in particular captured people's imagination. It's the Need for Speed Underground car. I've always wanted to find a good example, but it's always been very hard for me. I unfortunately at one point thought about doing like a K-swap all-wheel drive in one of those just to fix all the problems, but I know that's like sacrilege and everything else. 2G DSM, DSMs in general, and maybe even what I call the Gills third gen Eclipse. If you have a modified one of those, I wouldn't mind doing kind of a commentary on that car as well, since it's so hated. Next is the 2005 Ford GT. When I was young, I was on a road trip with my parents and the Ford GT had just came out. And I had never seen one. In Virginia, there's not many of them. But during this road trip, I fell asleep in the back seat and my parents saw one go right by us and they didn't wake me up. And I was so upset. I was like, how could you? How could you do this to me, Mom? It's not a phase, Mom. But the thing is I just have always adored the Ford GT, and all of us know the video Mr. Rob Ferretti posted years ago, Cops Chase Ford GT. And that just showed the rawness of this vehicle and how amazing it was to drive. And I have never heard truly a bad thing about the Ford GT when it comes to its driving experience. Are some of the materials inside dated by now? Yeah, sure, probably, but I just don't care. Same goes for like a Superformance GT40. I'd love to do a video on a GT40 as well to kind of see the comparisons, but yeah, I've never driven that generation 4 GT. Next is a modified Ford Probe or Mazda MX-6. And I know this is a very strange choice, but you guys seem to really like the video that I put out about the Ford Probe. I was very shocked because that was a weekend full of really cool cars and fast cars that I was filming, and that's the one that came out on top. I've always seen modified Ford Probes and MX-6s online, but I've never seen one in person. So short and sweet, if you got one, let me know, see if we can work something out. Next is another weird one, the original Ford Taurus SHO with the Yamaha engine in it that was originally supposed to be designed for a mid-engine sports car from Ford. I've done the modern SHO and it did great. I think you guys were really intrigued by this big body Ford that not a lot of people seem to know about. And if you do see one, you're like, it's pretty neat, it's pretty cool. They are big, they are heavy, but the thing is about the original one, that's not the case. It's this high revving, enjoyable, manual Taurus. Next is the Mazda Speed Protege, but the Mazda Speed Protege, what an interesting car. So weird, so out of left field, because the Mazda Protege on the surface is not an incredibly special car. It's a commuter car basically. But then they decided to make like a performance version of it. I find that fascinating. Bonus points if you have forced induction on one, because that would be really, really interesting. Speaking of Mazdas, next is the Unos Cosmo. Basically what most people use for 3-rotor swaps. The Unos Cosmo is a rotary engine that we basically never got in the United States, or the car we never got in the United States. It's a very long and beautiful kind of luxurious car, very ahead of its time when it comes to its interior, when it comes to its body shape. It's very mellow and curvy and kind of serene. I actually saw one of these at VMP Performance when I had a subscriber meetup, so shout out to you. It was beautiful and thank you for letting me check it out because I've never seen one. But the Unos Cosmo, very interesting, rotary engine, a car that doesn't look like it has a rotary engine, and I've loved the opportunity to get behind the wheel. Next is a fast / engine swapped A86. I've done a normal E86 and it was a great time. I got the kind of gist of the situation of what the cars are like. But I'd like to see one at their full potential. How does the chassis handle it? How does the legendary initial D car hold up in today's day and age? And I also just want to feel how raw it is since the chassis is so light. Next is a Honda Accord wagon that's modified. The Honda Accord wagon, I don't know what it is about it, but I love them. I love the front of it. It's just clean, simple, and you can make them kind of look sort of aggressive. And I've actually seen a few fast versions of these. Some people do like H22 swaps or B series swaps in them with turbos. And I remember at one point I was thinking about doing an Accord wagon for the channel because I just thought they were neat and different and you don't see a lot of them. But the back of it is very grandma. You know, it's just not the same as the front. Front you can really argue as a sports car. The back is just, it's okay. It's all right. It's not terrible. It's not bad looking. It's just kind of normal. All right, this is the bonus round of just stuff I know is stupid rare and will be nearly impossible to get my hands on, and it's gonna be a speed round, okay? Because at the end of the day, they're stupid rare and hard to find. Okay, let's go. Okay, Ford RS200. I love it. It's one of my favorite cars ever made, or favorite race cars ever made. Group B history, incredible drivetrain, high horsepower, small body. I wanna drive one. I've been dying to drive one almost my whole life. Please let me know. It's actually the only time I ever signed up for Bring a Trailer and actually bid on Bring a Trailer. And then the next day, it went up by $200,000 and I said, see ya. Next is the Koenigsegg Agera RS or any of the modern Koenigsegg Ageras. I love the Agera. It's my favorite hypercar of all time. Even though there's other cars out there that might be quote unquote better, I don't care. The Agera, just to me, is the epitome of looking cool, incredible technology, incredible handling, and crazy fast horsepower, and that's what I signed up for in this life. Next is the Nissan Juke R, an R35 GTR powered Juke that actually laughably was faster than the R35 GTR first gen. I thought that was hilarious. I think that's amazing. The Juke is a super weird car that not everybody fancies, but I'd love to see it at its full potential. Next is the Lexus LFA. It sounds amazing. I love the philosophy of they had to develop a digital gauge cluster because the motor revs so fast it couldn't keep up with it. It is arguably one of the best cars sound-wise ever made, and there's only 500 of them. Once again, pretty hard to find. Next is the Jaguar XJ220. Weird turbocharged V6. A lot of people argued it should have had a different motor in it, and it's just super cool to see in person. I saw one here in Atlanta about 2 years ago, and I was drooling over it and its body lines because it's just so goofy and 90s, and I freaking love it. Next is the freaking beast, the Porsche Carrera GT. Very hard to find someone that will let you drive one because they're basically worth $1 million now, and at the same time, the first gear clutch is notorious. If you drive it wrong, it can burn out this very expensive clutch. So a lot of people don't want to trust some YouTube channel kid to drive it, which I completely understand. Next is Von Gittin Jr.'s RTR 1400 horsepower Mach-E. I just saw this at a car show about a month ago. I thought it was incredible. Last but not least, a twin turbo last gen Viper. I drove a last gen Viper the very first time in 2015. It was a TA with That Racing Channel, and it was one of my favorite sports cars I've ever driven. Just the way the gearbox feels, just the way everything comes together, it just feels good and it's fun to drive. If I'm able to find something like a Calvo setup on a Viper and I'm able to review it, sign me up. Also, if you like this video and you want me to do more lists of cars I want to review in the future, and maybe you guys can help me out, let me know. It's actually kind of fun to make, to kind of think about the possibilities of the future when it comes to filming. So if you want to support this channel, make sure to head over to PattersonCarCare.com. It is my own original detail product brand with our own formulas, and it is made right here in the US, including our Brake Dust Pro, which is basically a cheat code for cleaning wheels. On that note, I typically upload on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays, and I will see you guys next time, and take it easy. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.